What's up, everybody? Mike Johnson, Yellow Buffalo here. Good to see you on the channel again. I am chilling. It's just been a relaxed day so far. I haven't checked the news. And here's why. Because I know that we're, as far as I know, under siege. And I am just waiting to hear that the military is gone. Like I said, I'm on the other side of town, so until they start putting up checkpoints, etc., etc., I don't think that I'm going to be having any problems. But that doesn't mean that them being here isn't worrisome. And I made it a point not to look at the news today because I just wanted to talk about my feelings about this. Just for a second. Because, whenever they send the National Guard in, they come in pretty heavy-handed, don't they? And I really feel like people have to realize that we have a right to protest. We have a right to speak our mind. And as a matter of fact, we have the right to vote out this current government. We have a right to vote out this current government, and I will do more research on this. But this is something that is written into the Constitution. We actually do have the right to call a special election, basically, to vote out a tyrannical government. And they have to go, according to law. And so anyone who doesn't believe that what's happening right now is tyrannical should probably imagine themselves in the same situation. Have a little empathy here. We talked about empathy a little bit. It's the idea of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. So that means, hey, I'm not in, South. Well, we don't really have a South Portland, but it's South Water Street. So it's like right as you're crossing the river, and it's like you got different businesses and different buildings and stuff. But it's kind of just like this hipster, yuppie kind of area, So it's not like there are really dangerous people out there doing really dangerous stuff. It's just a chance for people to express their grievances. And I don't want to stay on this for too long. I will say that there have been paid protesters that have come to Portland before and escalated the protests into riots. There have been people who are bored, homeless kids. They just want to, well, not necessarily just homeless kids, but, I've been in the life, so I do know that homeless kids, some of them will go out there just for something to do because they have nothing better to do, and it's like sometimes people go to protest because they just want to cause problems. It's like, different political organizations or political groups over the, you know, well, let's just say throughout time, have had people that have come in and infiltrated groups and made infighting and escalated situations that were peaceful and, through the first, made the first shot, threw the first rock, swung the first punch, because what they want to do is they want to incite that riot. They want to incite that violence because that's what they enjoy. Is this chaos, And I really don't know if humans really enjoy the chaos. I think maybe something comes upon us, something comes over us. Maybe this innate training not innate training, because that wouldn't make sense, right? See, sometimes I get to talking and then some words will just bloop. Why? Because somebody else wants to take over the conversation. And I know people will say, well, hey, why don't you let him speak? And I could easily do that. I give them the rules. When somebody else is talking, you don't interrupt. And we have not made an agreement that I would channel for them. So, because I am doing this work, on the physical level, I've been doing this work by myself for the last few years. I feel that I shouldn't do that because I know for a fact that channeling and telepathic communication and connecting with these higher beings can take a toll on someone's mind. I was sitting here talking about the protests, and then I said trained innate, and went off on this tangent about, do I recall? That's the unfortunate part. He got ripped from my train of thought. So now I can go back to what I was talking about. There's so many things that are wrong with this world right now. We want to now call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Trump did that, and I actually looked on maps and everything, online, and it's the Gulf of America now. Let me double check this because, I have something up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh yeah, you're not going to be able to see it. I'm not huge into numerology or anything, but I do find it interesting. So, it's kind of like playing slot machine. So when, there's number sequences or repeating numbers, etc., I have looked it up, so I have kind of a working knowledge of these things. But sequences, I see them often. Repeating numbers, I see them often, and I know this means that I am on the right path. So, I got on here wanting to talk about the fact that there is, up until earlier this year, there was no official language to this country and no official religion. Um, and the reason why is because the founding fathers knew that English was the language that was being used anyways. It was the predominant language, and they didn't want to alienate others who spoke different languages, just amongst Americans. Because there was a lot of travel going on back in that time. A lot of travel between here and England and France and Spain and Portugal, etc., etc. All up and down the Western Hemisphere. People were traveling, but there was a lot of war as well, But people spoke multiple languages. People knew and were fluent in multiple languages. So you don't have to worry. Back then, you didn't have to worry about whether or not somebody could speak English. So it wasn't until earlier this year when an executive order was put in to make English the official language that we have officially told non-English speakers that we no longer want you. And this is unfortunate because there are plenty of people who have been here for many years that have difficulty speaking English. It's one of the most, if not the most difficult languages to learn if it's your second language. And, I've worked on learning a few languages. I'm not fluent, but I do know some German. I do know some Spanish. I know some Cherokee. I know some Lakota. I've sang in many different languages: Italian, French, German, I said German already, Latin, so my tongue knows a lot of different tongues. And I feel, especially coming from an indigenous perspective, where there were so many languages, where there were so many different cultures, where there were so many different peoples, I feel like it's a really big slap in the face to the founding fathers. And I want to get into this. But I want to make it clear that, having no official language set us apart from a lot of different countries because we wanted to welcome in immigrants. Now, for the talk of official religion, I Googled this. I Googled, and I'm using my confirmation bias. And I know that Google and the algorithm and everything isn't going to give me information that I am not going to like because it's based off of what I research and the type of things that I look at. So I said, why didn't the founding fathers name an official religion? And it says the founding fathers didn't establish an official religion because they wanted to protect religious freedom, avoid religious conflict and division seen in Europe, and ensure the government remained neutral in matters of faith. Many believe that state support of a religion was a violation of natural rights and would foster division, so they created a secular government with the established clause of the First Amendment, which prohibits government endorsement of religion. Now, you got to know in that time there was a lot of religious wars that they were just coming out of, one after another. There was a lot of religious persecution, and this is where they came from. Now, you got to remember, I am not somebody who's like a fan of what a lot of these guys did. I know my history. What I will say is maybe these founding fathers were thinking, it's not a good society now, but what if we lay the groundwork for something better? That's why they say to form a more perfect union. So, am I happy about slavery? Absolutely not. Do I, applaud the way that they treated indigenous peoples on this continent? Absolutely not. Do I feel that women had a fair shake? No. Do I feel that, there's a lot. There's a lot that I don't agree with, And I feel that one thing that has helped me in my mental conversation is that I have learned that humans aren't perfect. Humans aren't perfect. And so if you are coming from a society where slavery is the norm, if you're coming from a society where a certain group of people is treated differently simply because of, the color of their skin or how they are defined based off of who they were born from, then you have to realize that this is going to be the way that people look at things. I mean, if you see The Adventures of Huck Finn, for example, and the way that they address the black man in that, I would really want people to know that social norms change. Social norms change. And this is the reason why they didn't want to be so rigid with these things. It is the reason why they didn't put a definition of, well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there because if I do, then that's going to argue so much stuff. But the fact is, we as Americans have to respect the fact that there were a lot of people coming from a lot of different places that came here to create a better space for them and their families. Now, that destroyed the lives of millions of other people. I really hope that we can teach that for the rest of existence. I hope that we can teach that there was a point in time when, humans thought that they were better than each other. And it was either because of where they were from, or the color of their skin, or what gender they were born. And I feel that it's not healthy, for us to forget what we've come through. I've had people who have come to me and said, I don't understand why people are still, complaining about slavery. And I will say this one thing, because, slavery was the first nail in the human rights coffin, we'll call it, and African chattel slavery isn't the first form of slavery. I mean, we've read the Bible, we've learned about Egypt, and we've heard all these stories. It's a tale as old as time. Slavery is a tale as old as time. We're experiencing slavery now, and I'm talking about actual, physical labor, manual labor slavery. Is how we get some of our bottled water. This is how we get some of our chocolate, and it's how we get some of our coffee and different things. And these companies have admitted to that. So people can disagree with me as much as they want to, but the fact is that we all know that we are profiting off of the harm of others. The global north, as it's called, is profiting off of the destruction of the global south. And I am super happy that our Africa is bouncing back. I know China's had a big hand in that as well, but I really am excited that Africans are taking their sovereignty back. Africans are taking their home back. They're taking their life back. They're taking their lives back from imperialist governments that want to control them. Just like we were talking about Mexico, Africa's been experiencing the same things. People coming in, taking all their minerals, taking, more than I could even imagine, and displacing millions of people, killing millions of people because we need our batteries for our cell phones. We need our batteries for our cars, And I am so glad that I am hearing a different narrative now from Africa. If you haven't heard anything, check it out. Be like, Africa stepping into the 21st century, Africa's new technologies, Africa, repatriation, and these are things that Google was just like, hey, guess what, Mike? I didn't even have to do anything. YouTube did it for me, because I was still spending most of my time watching higher vibrational videos, and I kept telling myself, I need to create, I need to slow down on my content consumption, and I need to start creating. And so, it's not just going to be me talking every single time, but I do want to get comfortable in front of the camera. I'm comfortable in front of people, but I'm less comfortable in front of a camera. And so this is why I'm doing this, and I'm just putting it up there for the whole world to see, and I might make mistakes, and I do my best to do my best, because I want people to know these things. The United States, up until earlier this year, did not have an official language. Donald Trump did that to alienate the English as a second language community. The United States does not have an official religion. We'll see what Donald Trump does with that. Because as long as we don't have an official religion, we can't keep saying that we need a theocracy. We can't keep saying that religion needs to create laws. Because I'm going to tell you something. If you're afraid of Sharia law over there, the theocracy over here would be just as bad. You've got to remember that religion, Christianity, comes from the same place that Judaism comes from the same place that Islam comes from. They've got the same rules, cutting off the hand when you steal, being stoned to death when you commit adultery. If religion ruled our justice system, we would probably all be dead. All of us. Don't argue with me on this. You know, people have this self-righteous blindness. They're so blind to the truth that they are not perfect. They're blind to the truth that they are not right about everything. You've got your blinders on. You only see this much. You only see the, hang on. You only see this much. Like, and I'm trying to look around my fingers and look through my fingers, you know, to see what I can see outside of this. You know, I see there's a little bit of light coming from here, and then I'm sitting here with my eye, like, can I look through? Why? Because I know what it feels like, you know, every day to not have freedom. I know what it feels like every second of the day to feel like you're being watched. I know what it feels like every single second of the day to know what it feels like to be scrutinized, to be criticized, to be vilified, you know, and I feel like we all experience this. I just so happen to hear it in words. A lot of times people get it in feelings, you know, and you have to remember that is not you. I was looking, you know, after my mom passed, you know, it really wrecked me, and I had to take my time to look at death, you know. And I was really blessed to have gone, when I was going to school, I took this myth and folklore class and started talking about all the different death rituals from around the world and all the different traditions. And I was really, it helped me because, you know, in, you know, the United States, we look at death like it's, you know, dirty and scary and, you know, like other countries, they will sit with their deceased at the table and have feasts with them, you know, every day until, you know, I guess I don't know the details on that one because they didn't tell me that, but I know that people treat their deceased a lot differently around the world, you know, and so I had to come to the conclusion that, you know, loss, as much as it hurts me, I have to accept that it's a part of life. I have to accept that it's a part of life. And you know, I got here basically just by talking about people. We need to mellow out. We need to mellow out. If this is all that we have, you know, because I believe in life after death. Now, if this is all that we have, okay, then why spend the time fighting? Why spend the time pushing people away? Why spend the time harming one another? You know, why spend the time trying to get one over on somebody? One-upsmanship. Why are we doing that? Because in this life, we don't have the triggers that we used to, you know. I mean, think, you know, 50 million years ago, running away from saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths, you know, trying to keep from getting mauled, you know, Now we don't have that. Let's say, 10,000 years ago, well, 20, 30,000 years ago, we're in the savannah, having to, run from lions. We don't have this anymore. I took this stress and human health class when I was going to school, and it was talking about the fact that we don't have this fear that we used to have. So our brains, we still react like we're, being chased by a tiger, when, for example, we drop a glass of milk. It's like the same reaction. Oh my God, oh no. But it's a lot less danger, Gus is like that, he gets so anxious sometimes. And I look at him and, I wonder if I was like that. Because that's usually how it is, right? Your kids, even if it's your pets, they take on your personas, they take on who you are and what you act like. But I also think that, if that's the case, then he's seeing something that I don't see. Or he's actually experiencing the conversation like I am, and it's really stressing him out. I don't know. But I am over my time because I want to keep it around 30 minutes for now until I get a curriculum going and maybe we can actually get some, real deep down stuff to help people through this. I just want to remind you, it's about love, okay? We are all human. We all bleed red, We all need oxygen. We all need food. We all need love. All right? Have a good day, y'all. Much love. Peace.